Good afternoon and welcome to A Woman's Heart. We are very privileged to have with us Sue Donaldson back in the studio again. For those of you who have been listening to this show for a while, we have had Sue on before and we are privileged to have her again. So thanks so much for joining us today, Sue.
Lisa, you're so sweet to have me on for a second dose.
Yes, yes, we are not tired of you yet. Not at all. So, but I do still want to ask, just in case someone hasn't listened to our previous conversation, just a real quick, a little bit about yourself and something fun that isn't normally in your bio.
I was going to say that isn't normal. That's all about me. I live on the central coast of California. I discovered this gem of a town that's 7 miles from the Pacific when my husband found it first, and he's from Iowa and I'm from California.
Okay.
But anyway, so we live in San Luis Obispo and we have three grown daughters. None of them are married, so that's a prayer request daily. And one is in New York, and one is in Chicago, and one is in LA. And so we get to go to big cities when we visit them and we adore them.
Yes.
I'm a writer, speaker, podcaster, and have a blast.
Yes, yes, you do. And you are very well known for your hospitality
Mm.
and your fun stories, which are all throughout your latest book that I got to read, Never Alone, Stories of Invitation and Connection. And it really was, there were so many fun stories in there. And as I mentioned, you are very well known for your passion for hospitality.
Yes, yes.
And you talk about this a little bit, but where did that passion for hospitality really come from?
Well, a couple things. One, my mother was very hospitable, but she wasn't raised that way. So I talk about that, I think, in the book, and how I thought she was this big queen of hospitality because by the time I came along, number four of five kids, she could do it without, getting stressed. I think a lot of people don't do it because it's so much work. There's all sorts of reasons. They don't have the money, they don't have the time, they're working full time. They think their kids shouldn't be shown to the public, whatever. There's like 17 reasons why we don't do it. But she was past all that by the time I came along. But one time I interviewed her, Lisa, and I found out that she was not raised by hospitable parents herself for
Uh-huh.
various reasons.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so she was very much afraid of it when she started. And my dad invited the deacon board over for pie and coffee. And she knew how to make pie, but she didn't know how to make coffee.
One
And
would
it's a
think it'd be
whole,
the other way around.
yeah, exactly. And it's a hilarious story in the book, Never Alone, because she really did what one author said. She broke the chain of ungrace. She had not been raised with the grace of hospitality, which actually is a command. It's not a suggestion in scripture.
Yes.
And it's not a burdensome one when we do hospitality and not worry about entertaining. There's a huge difference.
Yes, there is.
So I talk a lot about that in when I speak and when I write. But so because I was comfortable by the time I came along, and when all five of us kids know how to make coffee and we know where to buy a pie if we don't want to make one. And so anyway, but I was single till I was 35. And so I really relied a lot on hospitality
Yeah.
for my own sense of community and not feeling lonely. When I went to the mission field at 30, I went to Brazil, lived there a couple of years, lived in different places. And wherever you go, you have to create a new community. I
Yes,
talked
you
to a 24-year-old single woman yesterday at my table, crying because she doesn't know if she should move. She needs a new job. But then she said,
do.
but I don't want to have to build a new community. And I said, I get it, but if God's telling you to go, you go. And
Yeah.
when you step off a cliff, you find out that it's only a curb when it's God holding you up.
Oh, I like that. I like that analogy of, yeah, it feels like a cliff, but it's just a little curb. And what are you hoping if people listen to the rest of this conversation, what are you hoping that they're going to get out of our conversation today?
So many things. The main thing about hospitality and invitation is that it reflects who God is.
Hmm.
So if you know of God and think you know God personally, but you don't really feel it, not that our faith is based on feelings, but
Yeah.
if you haven't actually embraced God's love for yourself, his welcome is where we start. And so he is the ultimate host because he went to the cross and back to make sure that we had the invitation. and it's because of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so I want that to be first and foremost. It's gospel-centered hospitality where sometimes people will not go to church if you say, "Hey, you want to come to church?" They think you're weird, at least in California. But if you say, "Would you come for brunch after church?" Sometimes they might come to church too, but mostly they'll just come to brunch.
Yeah. If you
And
feed them.
so,
Yeah.
right, if you feed them, they will come. And that's not just Southern, that's anywhere. And so I feel like, you know what, this person, I'm sort of um, making the garden path easier and smoother for them to come to know Jesus through my hospitality.
Yeah.
So hospitality is a lot of work. Let me tell you, I'm changing these sheets today because someone else is coming in on Saturday, and that's exhausting for me.
Yes.
But when I realize there's a deeper why, you've all heard about you have to have a deep why. I mean, why are you doing what you're doing, Lisa? Why do I
Yeah.
do what I do? The deeper why gives us the confidence, gives us the strength, gives us the faith
Yes.
that what we're doing is for God. So we don't do hospitality to show off our house. That's entertaining.
Yeah.
We don't do hospitality to display our Martha Stewartness or Pinterest values. We might want to make it pretty. That's okay. That's a gift.
Yeah.
But we don't have to. What we do is we do it to serve the person at our table.
Mhm.
And maybe that person, like I have about 15 women coming over tonight. That's chapter 10 in my book, Wine Nights. I'm
Yes.
doing this tonight, and I hope that doesn't offend your audience, but there are non-wine drinks.
There are
But
not one.
anyway, I
Yes.
invite people, random people like from the gym, from the neighborhood, and from the church,
Hmm.
and mix them up. And the idea is that they will come because they need connection.
Yeah.
And that gives them maybe later on when they see me, either me going through a hard time or they're going through a hard time, that I can let them know who I depend on, which is Jesus.
Yeah, yeah, and I love the idea of wine night, and I've tried to figure out what will be a good night for me to do it. And one of the things that I loved about it is it's a what I would call a mixing of the worlds,
Oh,
because
totally.
so many times we have our friends in one circle or we have our friends in another circle, and rarely the twain shall meet.
Mhm.
And so it can be very interesting and at times a little scary when you
Awkward.
run in a lot of different circles
Yeah.
to mix those worlds
Mhm.
because you're not really sure how some people are get along and that. But it can also be really, really neat to see those connections that are made. And I would just tell us a little bit more about the wine nights and how you mix up these worlds and where you find and how you let God lead you and who to invite and the questions that you ask.
Well, you know, Lisa, since you're a woman of the word, that we are commanded to go out and into the world and make disciples. But
Mhm.
that doesn't mean we have to go to Bible college. It doesn't mean we have to write a book or a Bible study or even lead a Bible study. It might mean, though, that we have to go across the street. And
That can
that could
scare you.
be scarier than going to a foreign field because when you go as a missionary, people expect you to be different. But
Yes.
when you're in your own uh, home and neighborhood, you need to reflect Christ. Otherwise, you're wasting your life. You know, to me, it's just like if you're not if you're not submerging your life into the real world, you're separating them from the gospel. And Jesus went right into the world,
Yeah.
but he did it through the power of the Holy Spirit, and we have the same Holy Spirit in us, and we forget that. I remember years ago, a pastor said, we are not responsible for saving our neighbors. And that really helped me because I felt
Yeah.
so burdened for them. I
Hmm.
love my neighbors. Well, some I like them, others I love. But the ones that I'm really praying for, I go, I am not responsible for them to say yes to Jesus. One of our favorites across the street, he told me once, I don't know what I said that made him say this, but he said, Sue, you're never going to get me to church. That's what he said. And I said, oh, well, how about Jesus? That just came out of my mouth. He didn't say a word. And the other day, I gave him and his friends and family a retirement dinner. And it was only because of love. It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Everybody brought stuff and we did conversation starter to make him feel loved. And he gave me several hugs that night as well as the next couple
Mhm.
days. And I thought, okay, Lord, I don't know when he's actually going to understand the gospel for himself, but
Yeah.
I have to do what you've told me to do. So
Hmm.
I can't even remember your question. Oh yeah, it was about wine nights. It started because I invited these kids over after church. We met them at church. They were old enough to drink wine college kids. We live in a college town, and one was a college graduate. And so when they came for dinner, then I couldn't have them for that day. And sometimes I just can't do it the same day because my husband's an introvert and I have to honor him.
Yes.
Unlike my mother, who had company every Sunday. So we have to change the way we were raised to accommodate our spouse.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. And so, though I do remind him it's a sacrifice at times, but and he reminds me of the same thing.
Yes. And he
One,
sacrifices as well.
he sort of does the other day. It was so funny, Lisa. I was having a birthday luncheon for a girlfriend the next day, but to save time, I actually set the table the night before. And Mark, my husband, walked by the table and goes, he like, are we having company right now? I said, no, dear, it's all women and it's tomorrow. Relax. But it was kind of funny how he was like, even after 38 years of marriage, he still gets nervous.
Yes.
Um, so what happened was I said, you guys want to come for dinner a week from Tuesday? That's what I said.
Mhm.
And so at the table, then I had them each tell their story. They're like seniors or graduates.
Mm.
And the girl who was a graduate said that she had come up to our town because of a serious boyfriend relationship. And as soon as she got here, he dumped her.
Ugh.
So I knew the feeling, as you knew in chapters two and
Yes.
three of my book.
Mhm.
It's
Oh
a good
yeah.
book. It's a good
That question's coming up next.
yeah, it's a good book to give to singles. Anyway, I said to her later, not only that, she was very sweet and did all my dishes. I thought, anyone you can invite over and does my dish, you are getting a return invitation.
Yes, you can get invited again.
So I said, would you like to get together? So she started coming over about once a month and she would cry and she would bring wine that had already been opened, which I think is illegal to carry that in your car. But anyway, she made it over and she goes, I'll bring the wine. I go, okay. And I just counseled her and listened and
Hmm.
told her she dodged a bullet and God preserved her.
Yeah.
And a little bit later on, she was able to buy a coffee shop. She was really into cooking. And so one night she would just said out loud around friends that I knew in my neighborhood who said, oh, I'm going to Sue's for wine night, as if it were a thing. Lisa, I got to tell you how this is just so odd. She goes, for wine night. And these two girls go, I want to come to wine night. And so they went to my church. And so we four would meet for several months and we gave her counseling and mentoring about how to own a business and things like that. So that was maybe 6 to 9 months about 6 years, 6, 7 years ago.
Wow.
And after that, I just started inviting, I would have Christian wine nights where I only invited Christians for
Hmm.
their mutual encouragement.
Yeah.
But then I realized, as a friend of mine says, we're not here to salt the salty. We're to be salt and light. If we're only being around Christians,
Yeah.
we're not really obeying God and we're missing out on so much excitement. You wake up in the morning and go, who am I
Hmm.
going to meet today? And there's still some fear, like not fear, but like last night I go, I really don't think I'm going to have very many people tonight because people keep saying, oh, my kids are sick or I'm out of town. And my husband said, how many are you having? I go, I think we'll only have 10. The last time I said that we had 17 and before that we had 28. I mean, you just don't know, but that's what it's like living with God. It's exciting rather than scary.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I invite, now I don't just do, every once in a while, I'll invite 3 or 4 Christians who I know could use some encouragement, and they're
Mhm.
introverts. They don't want the big group.
Yeah.
But mainly because I only have so much energy. I'm almost
Yeah.
74. Actually, I turned 74 the day before your podcast comes out, the
Oh,
25th of
yeah.
May.
Happy early
And
birthday.
I'm tired. And so you have to pick and choose what God's calling you to do. So I do 2 conversation starters. I have a book, 252 conversation starters. Why? Because we waste so much time talking about things that don't matter.
Mm, yeah.
So I know you don't because you do this radio show and it's such a blessing. But you ask a question that means something to the person that you're asking,
Yeah.
and you're giving them an opportunity to talk about their lives. And then it connects the people. So once we're done answering the questions, they end up moving over to that person. Hey, I went on that cruise, or I had that same experience with my kid,
Yeah.
or whatever it is.
Yeah. Or yeah, there's a shared experience there, and then somebody's going, "Oh, I'm not alone." Well, you mentioned the word
Exactly.
exciting. And one of the things that one of the stories that stood out to me was you'd had a call from an ex. You were just, and it was a very bad, horrible, no good day. And you just didn't know how you were going to get your money, lots and lots of different things going on. And Jim, your friend Jim says, "Oh, I'm so excited for you." And you were like,
Yeah.
"Are you
Yeah.
what?" I mean, you probably wanted to deck him. You didn't say that in
Yes,
the book,
I
but you
did want to
prob
deck.
yeah, it was like, what? But he said, "I'm so excited about your life."
Yeah.
And you talked about how God's excitement is not the same definition as
Mhm.
ours. And
Mhm.
there was a lot more meaning behind his statement behind that. So tell us more about that day and his response and what you've come to see in that response about our
And,
excitement versus God's excitement.
and two fun things about that. 2 weeks ago, I was able to repeat that line to a friend who had just not gotten the job that she didn't get the
Mm,
job she wanted and thought God
yeah.
wanted for her. And the second thing is I just repeated that story at a women's retreat 2 days ago. And so that's
Nice and
really
fresh.
fresh in my mind. But the point is, he said it. I had found out the night before my ex was engaged.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
so I sort of cried all night and felt a little betrayed because I was a good girl. And the
Yeah.
next day I told him, he was my boss in this missionary organization I was with, Wycliffe Bible Translators. And I said, Jim, I have to speak 4 times in the next 3 days and continue raising my money support to go to Papua New Guinea for training. And I don't know how I'm going to do it because I just, didn't sleep and I feel betrayed. And first he said, did you tell God that? And I go, yeah, we have that kind of relationship. And then he said, he is very soft spoken. I'm just so excited about your life. And yes, I wanted to deck him, but I didn't want to cry because he was a man and you know how you feel embarrassed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just said, I croaked out the word, why? And
Hmm.
he said, because only God is going to get you through this.
Mm.
So we shortchange what we could actually learn about who God is by not getting out of the boat.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
when Peter said, is that you, Lord? And Jesus said, yes, he got out of the boat. Now, we always emphasize the fact that he fell, but he first got out.
But he was the only one that actually was brave enough to get out of the boat in the first place.
Exactly. So if
And
he
I
had, if,
love Peter for so
yeah,
many reasons.
me
He
too.
gives me
Also,
hope.
he gives me hope because we both like to talk. Hmm.
Yes, yes. And at least I've never rebuked Jesus to his face, but that's another whole entirely different story.
Story. And I did get my support in those 3 days.
Yeah.
And there's this little group of women there. I spoke to them, and one of them knew me. So she said, tell the story. So I had to tell the whole story about the breakup and about the engagement and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And they collected nickels for me. Is that so
Oh my
cute?
gosh.
So
Oh my
probably not
gosh.
even $100. But a couple years later, when I got engaged, they felt completely responsible for their prayers for me, which I attribute to them as well.
Yes, yes. Well, that is great. And one of the other stories that stood out to me, you talk about adding when hospitality is a command, but to do it without grumbling. And there's so
Mhm.
many other things we should be doing without
Without
grumbling.
grumbling.
You actually had a different story attached to that, but this when I read the Don't Grumble, I actually thought about the story of when your kids called and said, "Hey, can
Oh,
we
yeah.
have like all these people come over to the house for like the whole weekend?"
Weekend.
And your only thought was, "I don't have enough towels."
Exactly. That's exactly what I thought. It's the first thing. And I was in a bad mood. She called me at work. I wasn't supposed to be on my phone. And she said, can I have these friends come for the Madonna Mountain Beer Festival? I thought, oh, great. My mother would roll her eyes.
Oh.
And I said, how many did you invite? She said, 12. I said, 12? I don't have 12 sets of guest house. And then I thought to myself, I'd just written 2 or 3 books on hospitality. Like, why are you complaining, Sue? Go to Costco, buy towels, God will provide. And I said, could you ask them to bring towels? No, Mom, I don't want to ask them to bring towels. Well, she ended up doing a whole spreadsheet, bring your towel, bring a sleeping bag, and we ended up with 20, not 12.
Oh my word.
It was such a blessing, but it was exhausting because some came in Friday night and stayed through Saturday, and then they had to go back to work. Some came in Saturday morning. Some didn't leave till Monday morning. because
Mm.
it was a 3-day holiday. But next year, the following year, the Memorial Day weekend, Mark and I were out of town, and I was so blessed not to be home.
Yes, you didn't have to do it again. But it was a huge blessing. I laughed at that story because I was like, oh, I could so see that going, oh my gosh, that's a lot of kids. And as long as you
Yeah,
have sleeping bags, it's like, okay, we
yeah,
might be able to do that. But yeah, the sheets and the towels and some of that, it's like, whoo, that's just
yeah.
a lot. But then yeah, if you were to do it and do it begrudgingly and
It would
grumpy,
ruin it. Yeah,
it would have ruined it for
yeah.
everyone and not just you. And God just
And
really showed up that
he
weekend with
did.
friends
And
and all the kids.
Mark set up a tent in the side yard. So
Mhm.
I don't know who slept there. I mean, these kids were not church kids. I was not asking any questions. But
Yes.
I just thought, okay, some of them are Christians, most of them are not, and
Mhm.
they could have gone out, whatever, to bars the second night. They stayed inside and we played games.
Oh,
It
wow.
was such a blast. Like I didn't even go to bed because they're so noisy downstairs. And at one point I say, we need to shut the windows. They go, oh, are you cold, Mrs. Donaldson? And I said, no, but I have neighbors and I don't want them hearing our clapping. We're playing this bunco type game. And it was such a blessing. These kids needed home cooked meals. They're so
Yeah.
wealthy. I mean, they're pre-med students. They
Hmm.
run companies. They're in their late 20s. They're all from San Francisco. They're bright, bright, bright. And they go out to eat all the time. So for me to
Wow.
make, crock pot lasagnas and homemade food was
Yeah.
fun for them, and they won't forget it.
Yeah. No, it really is. And you like to call hospitality is self-serving sanctification.
You caught that.
Why do you call it that?
Because when we obey God, we already said be hospitable.
Yeah. Hmm.
When we obey God, it's part of our sanctification. We become more like Christ.
Yeah.
But when we obey God in hospitality,
Mm.
it blesses us so much.
Yeah.
And
It really does.
it
Yeah.
keeps us from being lonely. Now, I know I'm speaking to a lot of introverts here because of, half the population. They only need one person, but they need to invite that person.
Yeah.
Okay. And sometimes the person you invite, that may be the only invitation they get all year.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
mean, I interviewed a couple yesterday on my podcast who adopted before I talked about adoption and foster care, but they had done Big Brother for
Mm.
this young man
Yeah.
when he was 11, and they're still very involved in his life at 24.
Oh,
Well, he was
wow.
in the same class as my middle daughter. So even when he would come back to visit married with children, they come to our Christmas Eve soup and bread potluck because they were raised coming to our house for that. So
Oh,
we were like
wow.
an additional family for this
Yeah.
young man who
Mhm.
struggled because his father had left when he was a baby.
Yeah. Well, and I was talking to somebody the other day and they have no children of their own, but they
Mm.
talked about how somehow they end up being like another part of other people's children's
Right.
lives. And
Yeah,
and I
so
told her, I said,
important.
it's so important. I have three kids and I love them and they have come to love me again as adults. Um, but there was definitely a time when they did not want to share anything with me. They didn't want anything to do with me. And so I kept praying, God, please put other people in their lives that will sow into them and will make those connections and encourage them and give them a good role model when they don't, when they're not liking what I have to say. And just how important that really is for us to sow into other people's children's lives because you really don't know the whole backstory behind what's going on
No.
behind their doors, even if they're great parents.
Right. Yeah. And we're not judging their parents. We're
No.
just understanding that our kids didn't like us for a while either. And to always pray that there's someone else in our kids' lives like that. I remember when Bonnie was at USC, my oldest, she called during dinner and we had our adopted college student for dinner because we live in a college town. We always
Yep.
adopt a college student for the 4 years they're there. And I said, Bonnie, I can't talk. We have our new adopted college student for dinner. And she goes, oh, because no one asked her for dinner the 4 years she was at USC.
Oh,
And it's so sad that people in the
yeah.
church, and she went to church, and for people not to
Yeah.
invite these kids over, they just want a home cooked meal that's,
Hmm.
not a takeout thing. And this Saturday, in 3 days, hosting a bridal shower for this year's adopted college student.
Oh,
He's engaged,
wonderful.
and we can't go to their wedding because we're going to be on vacation. So I said, well, I'll host the shower. So that's just
Oh,
being an extra parent. I
hmm.
call it being an extra parent. There's a chapter on that, the story about Josie. And
Yes.
yes, because when I first met her, I said, tell your mom that I'm going to have you over to bake cookies with me. And she said, oh, my mom died when I was 16.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that when I said that to her.
Hmm.
So for me, it
Yeah.
was such a privilege because I do feel sorry for myself that my kids are so far away. But
Yeah.
when I can fill my life with these kids or actually young parents in my neighborhood, I had
Mhm.
19 for Easter, and two of them were young couples who just moved to this
Wow.
neighborhood. And one is coming to wine night tonight, and the other is coming for coffee on Friday. I mean, you could just fill your whole life with having people over.
Yes, you could. Yes, you could. Well, and along those lines, some people are introverts, and
Right.
being hospitable and having people over can be very, very intimidating, and they
Sure.
kind of freeze and, oh, how do I do that? What are some of those practical tips? Just really simple, easy
Mhm.
things to do that might be able to break it down and let somebody take a little baby step towards hospitality. Because if
Yeah,
you've never done it, the idea of hosting a wine night with 20 people is just too much, so you're not going
too
to do it at
much.
all.
Totally get that. And my first book is called Come to My Table, and it has the 4 steps to get started. It's basically my workshop. I'd love to come speak on it. I'd much rather talk about it than have it read it, but because it's more fun. But the first step is to start small,
Yeah.
and that should appeal to every introvert. You can just buy scones at Trader Joe's or Aldi's. You don't even have to know how to cook. You can just, my brother says, he was a pastor, he's a former pastor. He goes, Sue, I've learned that I can just offer someone a glass of water because he doesn't drink coffee, which I forgive him, but he can offer water. And when I said that, it really appealed to people. I now take water bottles over to my neighbor's gardeners
Oh.
because we don't have a gardener, but they're working out there.
Mhm.
And I just think it's a way of showing God's hospitality. So you start something simple, tea bag. Yesterday I had someone over for tea. She brought tea bags, but we used mine, and I had leftover coffee cake that I just defrosted that morning. So I made a cake and a half today. I probably burned one of them, but the idea is to freeze two of them because you never know who God's going to bring to your table.
Yeah.
So and then just buy stuff. Another tip that I think is really helpful for women is do hospitality with a trusted friend. Tell them who you
Okay.
want to have over, and maybe you invite one and they invite one, and they could be your anchor person at the table, talking to them while you're finishing up whatever you're finishing up in the kitchen. And
Hmm.
that has been fun. And like I remember when my mom was visiting when she was still alive, she loved my friends. And so I'd invite my friends. And as they came in, I said, Mom, this is Debbie. She's organized like you. She organized all my spices. And then they start talking about organizing, and that sets the stage.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, I would love to meet your friend that organizes too.
Yeah, me too. She moved to the South, so maybe you could.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she's closer to me than to
Yes,
you.
she
That
is.
would be great. Because I could use some help with that. I like being organized, but I don't always have the time or
Yeah.
I get frozen. So just kind of like with hospitality, sometimes
Yeah,
there's so many ways and so many options. You just kind of go, deer in the headlights, and it's hard to choose. But I love
exactly.
those baby steps with just inviting one person over or like a friend with something like that. I think those are some really,
And if you
really
have
good tips.
small children, start with your children's friends
Hmm.
because then you don't have to worry about cleaning the house because they mess it up anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
And also, we always invited our kids' teachers over for tea after school. So your own child would carry the conversation,
Hmm.
and because they're so thrilled to have their teacher over. And so one of those teachers was our daughter's fifth grade teacher. All three girls had her.
Oh,
And
wow.
she comes now every Christmas Eve for soup and bread potluck and brings homemade rolls. And she's not of faith and she's not married. And we're her family, but only on Christmas Eve.
Oh, wow. That is sweet. I have my children's first grade teacher that goes to church with me. So we get to see
Oh.
her on a regular basis. Well, so one of the things that I always like to ask everyone, hospitality and the anti-loneliness has always been a passion of yours or has been for a long time. And what would you say to encourage someone to pursue the passion that God has placed in their heart?
Mm. Well, the main thing is to abide.
Hmm.
So I'm rememorizing John 15 because I forget things as soon as I memorize them. And it says, apart from me, you can do nothing.
Yes.
So we can get ahead of that with our
Mhm.
passions and forget that you just said they're God-given passion.
Yeah.
So number one, if he gives it to you, it's a gift.
Mhm.
Number two, if he gives it to you, he expects you to use it. And number three, if he gives it to you, he will give you the courage to act on it. So if we are in the whole mindset of abiding every day, he
Mhm.
will show us the next step. He won't show you the third and the fifth and the 16th step, but he will show you the next step. It says in Psalm 37 to trust God and dwell in the land. That means you trust God and then you do the next thing, which Oswald Chambers said,
Mhm.
actually, not Elizabeth Elliot. And though she said it too. And you can just say, trust God and do the next thing. My mentor reminds me of that because I don't want to get ahead of God. So
Mhm.
I'd say if you're excited about a passion, sit back first to make sure you're abiding. Oh, let me tell you this fun thing. I recently heard a pastor, my daughter's pastor in New York is John Tyson, Church of the City, New York. And he said in a sermon recently, I want to get a black belt in abiding. And so I was speaking this last weekend. And so I thought, well, I can't really afford to go buy 108 black belts.
Yes.
And that's how many women were coming. So I bought curling ribbon, black curling ribbon. I couldn't even get crepe paper because it's the spring. There's
Oh,
no black crepe paper in the
no.
store.
No.
So I got curling ribbon and cut about this big of a length, about 4 foot length. And as I got to that point in my talk, we started passing out the curling ribbon. My husband said, that does not look like a belt. I go, they'll understand it. Don't worry.
It's
And
metaphorical.
so,
It's
so
making a
they,
point.
yeah, so they were holding up their ribbons. And I said, we all want to be black belts in abiding. And then you will do your passion the way God wants you to.
Yes. Well, and I smiled when you first said that because just the other day I got an email from a friend and her email thing was all about John 15
Oh,
and abiding.
mhm.
And she talked about how when it talks about where abiding, it's one continuous organism. The vine and the branch
Mm,
are one continuous organism. And it's not like God delivers a package of peace or joy or whatever, and we're supposed to steward it. It's more like how the heart delivers blood to our hand.
mm.
And that image of just really just being so continuously
Connected.
connected
Mhm.
that then when you're in the situation you don't have to go strive for peace, it
Right,
just flows out, the
right.
you're not, the tree isn't striving and trying to make the fruit happen, it
Mm,
just comes. And she talked about how an independent branch that's being self-sufficient isn't doing well, it's dying. And I'm like, ooh, okay. So I find it interesting you mentioned that
mhm.
abide right after that. So the timing of that was like, okay, Lord, there's something there.
There's
Thank you.
something there. I know.
There's
It's just,
something there. I love how
and
he puts those
it's
pieces
so
together.
basic. It's so
Yeah.
basic, but we forget so easily because I
Yeah.
get distracted by my to-do list.
Hmm.
So I told
Oh
the
yeah,
woman
me
the
too.
other day because I was so busy last week getting ready for this retreat. And I hadn't used that particular series since 2018, so I had to really get back into it and
Yeah.
renew everything. Plus, I had company,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. So
Oh,
I put on the top of my to-do list, abide, and then everything else.
there you go. There you go. No, I think that is great, great wisdom. And Sue, if somebody
Yeah.
is interested in getting more of your wisdom, learning more about hospitality, having you speak, getting your book, this, any of the others, plus your latest one, Never Alone, what is the best way for them to connect with you? Also, you have your podcast. So, yes.
Oh, yeah. The best way is my website. It's called welcomeheart.com.
Okay.
And there's a shop on there where they can get all the goodies.
Mm-hmm.
If they have questions about which book is best for them, they can email me at sue@welcomeheart.com.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to talk to them about that. My podcast is Welcome Heart, Living a Legacy Life.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Very good. Very good. Well, Sue,
Thank you.
thank you for everything you do and all of the joy and hospitality you spread and making people less lonely. And so
It's a
thank
blessing.
you very much and for spending time with us today, too.
Thanks for having me, Lisa. I appreciate it.